The figure in the rearview mirror. The long road home, Emily had always loved driving at night. There was something peaceful about the empty roads, the hum of the engine, and the soft glow of the dashboard lights. But tonight, something felt wrong. She was heading back from a friend's house in a neighboring town, driving through the desolate back roads that cut through the dense forest. The GPS had stopped working an hour ago, and her phone had no signal. Still, she wasn't too worried. She had driven this route many times before. The night was darker than usual, the moon hid behind thick clouds, and the towering trees swallowed what little light remained. The only illumination came from her headlights, piercing through the void like fragile beams. As she adjusted the rearview mirror, she suddenly saw something that made her blood run cold. A man was sitting in the back seat. A passenger in the dark. Emily's breath hitched, and her hands tightened around the steering wheel. She knew she had locked the doors when she got in the car. How had he gotten in? She dared to glance again. The figure sat unnervingly still, shrouded in darkness. His face was barely visible, but his presence was undeniable. Panic surged through her veins. Should she slam the brakes and run? Should she confront him? Summoning all her courage, she gripped the wheel tighter and whispered, Who are you, Silence? Her heart pounded in her ears. She turned the music off, hoping to hear something, anything. But all she could hear was her own breathing. Then, in the quiet, a slow, rasping whisper filled the car. You shouldn't have picked me up. The escape attempt. That was it. She wasn't going to stick around to find out what he meant. Without thinking, she floored the gas pedal. The car roared forward, speeding down the empty road. The tires screeched as she swerved dangerously around a bend. But when she looked in the mirror again, the figure was gone. Had she imagined it? Was her exhaustion playing tricks on her? Her breath came in shallow gasps as she tried to steady herself. She turned on the interior light and quickly glanced at the back seat. Empty. Letting out a shaky laugh, she rubbed her face. Get a grip, Emily. But just as she reached to turn the light off, she noticed something. The seatbelt in the back was buckled. Someone had been there. The whisper returns. A chill crawled up her spine. She turned the light off and kept driving, her hands trembling. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and the shadows of the trees danced menacingly in the headlights. Then she heard it again. The whisper. Let me out. Emily's blood turned to ice. The voice was coming from the back seat. She slammed the brakes, skidding to a stop in the middle of the road. Her chest heaved as she turned around, half expecting to see the figure again. But the seat was empty. Then, in the silence, a soft knock came from inside the trunk. Knock, knock, knock. The trunk. Emily stared in horror. There was no way. No way. Someone could be in the trunk. She hadn't stopped since leaving her friend's house. But the knocking continued. Her hands shook as she reached for the trunk release button. A part of her screamed not to do it, to drive away and never look back. But she had to know. The trunk popped open with a quiet click. Slowly, she stepped out of the car, the cold night air wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. She walked to the back and lifted the trunk lid fully. Nothing. It was completely empty. A shaky laugh escaped her lips. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe she was just overtired. But then she noticed something. Scratched into the metal interior of the trunk, long, jagged marks, as if someone had been clawing to get out. Her breath hitched. She stumbled backward, her body screaming at her to run. That's when she saw it, a figure standing just beyond the trees, watching her. The chase. Emily's body acted before her mind did. She leapt into the car, slamming the door shut and locking it. Her hands fumbled to shift the car into drive, her entire body trembling. The headlights illuminated the figure as she sped forward. It was a man, pale, hollow eyes locked onto hers. His mouth was stretched into a grotesque grin. As she tore down the road, she dared to look in the rearview mirror. He was sitting in the back seat again. The never-ending road tears blurred her vision as she sped through the dark, gripping the wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. You shouldn't have picked me up, the whisper came again. I didn't, she screamed, her voice cracking. I didn't pick you up. The figure let out a low, guttural chuckle. Are you sure? The road stretched endlessly before her, but something was wrong. No matter how fast she drove, the road never changed. The same trees, the same bends, the same suffocating darkness. She was trapped. Her phone buzzed suddenly. A text message. With trembling hands, she glanced at the screen. It was from her friend, the one she had visited earlier. "Where are you? You never left." Her breath caught in her throat. Never left. Then where was she now? A cold breath tickled her ear. "Drive," the whisper commanded. And she did. No escape hours passed, maybe even days. The road never ended. She couldn't stop. She couldn't turn around. She could only drive. Her gas tank never emptied. Her headlights never dimmed. And the figure in the back seat never left. She was trapped in an endless nightmare. And deep down, she knew she would never escape.